The Champions Ballad is the second and final DLC that Breath of the Wild received, and as the date of this video, the last mainline Zelda game to receive any of that extra downloadable content. Nintendo was very weird in the Switch era when it came to picking and choosing which games would get expansions and which ones wouldn't. You had obvious ones such as Mario Kart 8, Smash Ultimate, Animal Crossing, and both the Splatoon games that received some extra stuff throughout their lifetime, but what was weird were some of the more single-player choices that did or didn't get the same treatment. Breath of the Wild got DLC, Tears of the Kingdom did not. Luigi's Mansion 3 got this weird multiplayer add-on for purchase, but we got next to nothing for Mario Odyssey or Mario Wonder. Just really weird choices all around, given that a lot of those games were phenomenal, and it seems like kind of a missed opportunity for Nintendo to cash in on them even more. Seeing Breath of the Wild get 2 DLCs while Tears of the Kingdom got none is probably the biggest pain point for me because I loved Tears of the Kingdom, and if that game got DLC to the level what we had in Breath of the Wild, I would love it even more than I already do. Releasing the Master Trials first was kind of interesting, since while it did have a main focus of regaining power to the Master Sword through a series of tough challenges, it also almost acted as this random grab bag of various smaller things that were more incremental bonuses rather than something larger. The Champions Ballad isn't something that I would classify as an expansion or anything like Shadows of the Erd Tree or Blood and Wine, but it is much closer to being that than the Master Trials was. This makes the Champions Ballad easily the stronger of the 2 DLC packs, given its larger scope and adding in new shrines, boss fights, and challenges, as well as all the additional story content. I think it's a phenomenal addition to what Breath of the Wild cooked up, especially if you already loved what the base game had to offer. So while I did just say that the Champions Ballad was primarily built upon expanding the story for Breath of the Wild, it still did also add a couple of minor things for you to play around with. So before jumping into the main focus of the DLC, I thought I'd highlight them for you. So first off, we have all the new armor sets, which, much like in the Master Trials, will have you follow some riddles that you find highlighted in various books in order to nab, or you look them up in a guide, dealer's choice. And while I will say I like all of them aesthetically, their use cases are honestly a little too niche for me. First up, we have the Phantom Ganon set from Ocarina of Time, which again, awesome to look at, but this really only increases your stealth, with the set bonus also giving you the disguise effect, so you're invisible to most enemies, and also increasing the strength of bone weapons because, well, I don't know who actually tries to use any of the Stell Arms outside of just some quick desperation moments when another weapon breaks anyways. Personally, I don't see any point of using this rather than just equipping Majora's Mask and then throwing on a couple other pieces of armor that will be more beneficial for you, unless you just really like the vibe of this one. Next, there is the Royal Guard set that lowers the amount of stamina usage for charged attacks. I could see this being somewhat useful if you're into using large weapons and want to get some extra hits off, but I personally think either the Phantom set or the Barbarian set would do you better by just giving you that flat damage buff. Then we have Ravio's hood from A Link Between Worlds, which outside of having the ears bounce when you move around, will allow you to climb a bit faster, but only diagonally and horizontally. This is technically better than using the headpiece for the climbing set, but I'd argue the slight difference in speed isn't worth losing out on the stamina you save by jumping, which when you have your stamina maxed out, you'll probably just end up doing more often than not. Oh, also, this can increase the damage of the sword beams that you shoot with the Master Sword, assuming that's something you even care about. Xant's helmet from Twilight Princess has a unique ability to stop you from freezing if enemies capable of doing so attack you. While I can see this being somewhat useful, I feel like enemies that do that are very few and far between, and I doubt most people would really want to go into their inventory to swap over to this rather than just blitzing whatever they're fighting. And finally, there's the Island Lobster shirt from Wind Waker, which really only gives you a minor heat resistance and the incredibly useful ability of making your raft go slightly faster if you use a Korok leaf. Definitely niche, but I think the reference is at least fun. So the armor loadouts this go around aren't as impressive as the Master Trials, and honestly, I do feel like there are some missed opportunities to not include some other armor from previous Zelda games. A couple of things that come to my mind right away is something like the Goron tunic from Ocarina of Time, or the magic armor from Twilight Princess, or hell, how about any of the masks from Majora's Mask? Like, come on, wear stuff like the bunny hood. That would work so well on Breath of the Wild's engine, but you know, this is still a solid armor lineup regardless. Outside of that, the Champions Ballad did add one more thing: horse armor. Hey, AG Ionuma doing our boy Todd Howard proud with this one. Really not beating the allegations of this is Nintendo's version of an Elder Scrolls game now, are they? I kid, mostly because this horse armor actually does something. You need to have a horse with max friendship in order to put this on, but when you do, they're able to get 2 additional speed boosts as well as being able to teleport. This definitely had me using the horse a bit more. I still typically traveled on foot since you can't grab materials on horseback, so while a fun addition, it still only had some small use case scenarios for me. And that kind of sums up how I felt about the armor additions. Good, but ultimately not too useful. You again can't upgrade or dye any of these, so if you went really hard on the material collecting, these items will basically just be for fashion purposes, which is still fine. Now, if you are starting a fresh run, you of course can directly go after these, but that same rule technically applies with everything in Breath of the Wild, as well as the Master Trials, and I think there are just some better options there. Now, the meat of this DLC comes with the main questline of the Champions Ballad. This gets unlocked as soon as you complete all 4 Divine Beasts, so this is pretty damn late in the game. You thankfully don't have to recover your memories or get the Master Sword to do this, but we're still talking at least 75% of the way through your adventure before you can actually do anything here. The easiest way to describe what actually happens in this quest come in 3 different parts. Part 1 will have Link travel back to the Shrine of Resurrection and take part in a challenge on the Great Plateau as he awakens new shrines. Part 2 will have Link travel to the various Divine Beasts and interact with 3 environmental challenges and shrines for each, before having a rematch with all the game's main bosses. And Part 3 will have Link take on a new Divine Beast before a final showdown with easily the toughest boss in the game. So let's run down what I think of these acts. The first act will have Link travel back to the Great Plateau and collect a weapon called the One-Hit Obliterator that will do exactly as its name implies, destroy anything in one hit. And it tasks Link in clearing out 4 enemy encampments around the area and clearing their respective shrines. That doesn't sound too bad, right? Well, there's 2 caveats. First, the Obliterator can only perform 2 hits before it needs to recharge. It's thankfully a rather short timer, but it means you can't really go into a camp with guns blazing or anything, and you need to be a little bit more strategic. And the one-hit part of the weapon's name doesn't just apply to enemies, but also Link himself, since wielding the weapon reduces his max HP down to 1/4 of a heart, making combat encounters far, far more tense. This is, in my opinion, where Breath of the Wild shines the most though. I like when the game actually gets a little bit more challenging and it feels like you're hanging on by a thread. I personally threw on Majora's Mask and was able to stroll up to enemy encampments to pick off my higher priority targets, but even then, some situations still got pretty hairy and I needed to scramble to stay alive. The shrines here also require Link to go through without taking any hits, making these by far some of the most challenging shrines in the game. More on that in the next act. But overall, very, very solid start, and this is easily one of the most fun and challenging things in Breath of the Wild. The second act comes with you going to these new monuments that have popped up near the Divine Beasts, meeting with the accordion-playing Rito, Cass, and deciphering his various riddles within his songs in order to open 3 shrines to gain new spiritual orbs to have a rematch with the Divine Beast's respective bosses. So I think your mileage may vary depending on how much you like the riddles and environmental puzzles that this game has. I personally don't find them too tough, and in fact, I think they're some of the biggest highlights of the game for me. You are given little snippets of the map where these challenges will occur, and you can seek out the advice of the various tribe leaders if you want some further hints. And these challenges aren't really too difficult. A bit of snow or sandboarding here, a bit of gliding through some rings there, maybe defeating a boss or shooting the horns on one of the dragons. It's stuff that will take you maybe a minute or so to accomplish. And then when you complete them, you are rewarded with what I believe to be some of the most challenging shrines in the game. Some of these puzzles actually had me sitting there and staring at them for a number of minutes, trying to figure out exactly what I needed to do, which again reinforces my point about how I think Breath of the Wild has some of the overall strongest puzzles in the entire series. So obviously this section gets some high marks from me. After getting the 3 orbs, you go into the Divine Beast to have a rematch with the various bosses, but with a twist. Your gear is reflective of one of the champions when you go to face them. I think this was done just to not nuke every boss the second that you go in there, and while thematically interesting and still challenging enough, you are just refighting the same bosses again, of which I already said I wasn't that big of a fan of. Your reward for completing these is pretty decent though, as it lessens the cooldown on your various guardian abilities, which hell yeah, you can use them more often now. What's not to love? Finally, there's the new Divine Beast, as well as the final showdown with Maz Koshia. For the Divine Beast, I won't really mince too many words here. If you like them in the base game, you will probably like this one too, but if you didn't, then this won't change your mind at all. I am in the former camp, and much like the first 4 Divine Beasts, you can easily beat this thing in like 30 minutes or less if you know what you're doing. The boss fight with Maz Koshia though, this is peak. Undoubtedly the best boss fight that Breath of the Wild has to offer. From the arena, to the music, to the several different phases that he has, yeah, nothing even comes close to him. Your reward for beating him is the Master Cycle, which, imagine for a second telling someone who was playing Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess back in the day that eventually we'd get a game where Link gets a motorcycle. They would have thought that was the dumbest shit ever. Even when this was announced, people thought it was a little weird. Little did they know what we would have coming up in just a few short years. But as a reward, I think this thing is so goofy but fun that I can't be mad at it. My only complaint is that you just get it so late in the game. I really wish they would have allowed us to take this into like New Game Plus or Master Mode and just use it there or something. I think that would have been awesome. Oh well, at least you get to help Cass finish his song, and you get a portrait of the champions together, which actually I almost forgot to talk about the story. So this actually is one of the biggest highlights of the DLC for me too. While I thought Breath of the Wild's story was decent, one thing that I wish we got a little bit more of was interactions with the different champions, and that's what this DLC is all about. It shows how Zelda recruited each of them to her cause, which I think is great, but my favorite stuff is just all the little character moments they have with each other. The highlight here is definitely the final cutscene. I think this is just straight up adorable, but also pretty tragic given what happens to them later on. I also love all the interactions with Cass. We see him kind of sporadically in the base game, but he was easily one of the favorite side characters there, and to give him more prominence, I think is great, especially because he brings with him a lot of music this time around with his accordion pieces, and any bonus to Breath of the Wild's phenomenal OST just sits as a cherry on top of what I consider to be a fantastic DLC. Where the Master Trials acted as an assortment of adding various things that Breath of the Wild did not have, the Champions Ballad doubles down on the key features of the game and brings more of it to the table. As someone who loves the shrines in vanilla Breath of the Wild, the ones added here are the most challenging and rewarding to complete in the entire game. The story content here was really some great stuff, and it actually has me excited to try Age of Calamity in the hopes of seeing more of these character moments. And we finally have a great boss fight. That is just a huge plus. Yeah, the new armor isn't that great, and you can't use the Master Cycle for much outside of collectible cleanup, and if you didn't like the Divine Beasts, the new one isn't exactly saving that idea. But overall, I still think if you're a big fan of Breath of the Wild, this DLC is something that you have to play. It's dumb that this isn't included by default for the Switch 2 version. It really, really should have been. But for $20, getting this and the Master Trials will easily get you a solid 10 to 20 hours of great content, which is why I can definitely recommend the Champions Ballad to you.